Most people are terrified of silence. Observe any social gathering, any business meeting, or any awkward first date. You will see a frantic, desperate attempt to fill every single second with noise. We have been conditioned to believe that talking is active and silence is passive. We think that to dominate a room, we must be the loudest voice in it. We think that to persuade, we must overwhelm the other person with arguments, data, and verbal cleverness. This is a lie. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. The truth is that continuous speech is often a signal of submission. It is a signal of insecurity. It is a signal that you are seeking validation from the group. When you study the behavior of high-status status individuals, whether they are CEOs of fortune-winning companies, seasoned interrogators, or naturally charismatic leaders, you will notice a distinct pattern. They do not rush to speak. They do not fear the void. They use silence not as an absence of communication, but as a heavy, tangible weapon to control the emotional baseline of the interaction. Today we are going to dismantle the psychology of silence. We are not talking about simply being quiet or being a good listener. That isn't Reminus-level advice for beginners. We are going to explore how to use strategic, weaponized silence to trigger anxiety in your opponents, to force the truth out of liars, to amplify your perceived status, and to dominate conversations without shouting a single word. We are going to look at the specific neurological reasons why silence makes the human brain panic, and how you can harness the panic to get exactly what you want both in the real world and in the digital world. To understand why this works, you must first understand the evolutionary wiring of the human brain. For our ancestors, social inclusion was a matter of life and death. To be cast out of the tribe meant death by exposure or predation. Therefore, our brains evolved a hypersensitive mechanism to detect rejection. In a primitive social setting, silence from the group was the ultimate indicator of disapproval. If you spoke and the tribe remained silent, it meant you had violated a norm. It meant you were in danger. Fast forward to the modern day. That ancient circuitry is still firing. When a conversation goes silent, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, perceives it as a social threat. It triggers a micro-minus dose of the fight-minus or minus flight response. This creates what psychologists call tension loops. The silence creates tension, and the human brain has a compulsion to resolve that tension immediately. To babble, to offer information. This is where the power dynamic shifts. In any interaction between two people, the person who is most comfortable with silence is the person who holds the power. The person who rushes to fill the silence is the subordinate. By simply refusing to resolve the tension loop, you force the other person to do the work for you. You force them to bid for your approval. This is the vacuum effect. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the anxious mind. If you create a vacuum of silence, the other person will instinctively rush to fill it with value, often revealing more than they intended. Let's look at a concrete, high-stakes scenario: salary negotiation. This is where most people lose thousands of dollars simply because they cannot keep their mouth shut. Let's say you ask for a raise. You state your number: I am looking for a 20% increase based on my performance. The boss looks at you and says, "That's much higher than we budgeted." The amateur panics. The silence feels like a rejection, so they immediately undercut themselves. They say, "But I could do 15%, or I know times are tight." They have just negotiated against themselves. They relieved the tension, but they lost the money. Now, look at the master practitioner. The boss says, "That's much higher than we budgeted." The master practitioner does nothing. They maintain soft eye contact. They keep a neutral face. They sit in the silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, For seconds, the silence stretches. The boss now feels the tension. The vacuum effect kicks in. The boss's brain screams to resolve the awkwardness. To end the pain of the silence, the boss starts negotiating against themselves. They might say, "However, we might be able to move some funds from the quarterly bonus, or let me see what I can do with HR." By simply waiting for seconds longer than feels natural, you have completely inverted the dynamic. You made their objection their problem to solve, not yours. This brings us to the concept of the second lag. In standard human conversation, the average gap between speakers is roughly 80 milliseconds. It is lightning fast. We are usually preparing our response while the other person is still talking. When you deliberately extend that gap to 3 or 4 seconds, you disrupt the rhythm. You break the expected social contract. When you use the second lag, 3 things happen simultaneously in the other person's mind. First, they doubt the clarity of their own statement. Did I make sense? Second, they seek your validation. Do they agree? Are they judging me? Third, they perceive you as having high processing power. We subconsciously associate slow, deliberate responses with deep thinking and high authority. Rapid fire responses are associated with nervousness and defensiveness. This technique is particularly devastating when dealing with liars or people withholding information. Consider the interrogation techniques used by intelligence agencies. One of the most effective ways to get a suspect to confess is not to yell at them, but to say nothing. The investigator asks a question. The suspect gives a lie. The investigator nods, but stays silent. They look at the suspect. Waiting, the suspect expects a rebuttal. When it doesn't come, the suspect assumes the lie wasn't convincing enough. So, the suspect adds more detail to the lie. I saw the new action film. The ticket machine was broken. They keep talking to fill the void, and in doing so, they add conflicting details. They create the rope that hangs them. The investigator used the suspect's own anxiety as the tool for extraction. You can apply this extraction silence in your daily life. If you suspect a partner is lying, or a colleague is withholding information, do not interrogate them. Ask a simple, open-ended question, and then embrace the void. When they finish their answer, look at them as if you were expecting more. 9 times out of 10, they will start talking again, and the second wave of information is usually where the truth hides. The first answer is the rehearsed script. The second answer, born from the panic of silence, is the raw data. However, the modern world has introduced a new battlefield for silence, one that most people fail to navigate: digital silence. We live in an era of instant connectivity. The blue check marks, the red receipts, the typing bubbles. These are all designed to create anxiety and demand immediate attention. Most people have zero digital discipline. They reply instantly to every text, every email, and every Slack notification. They believe this makes them look efficient. It makes them look available. And in the laws of power, availability is the opposite of value. Scarcity creates value. If you are always available, you are cheap goods. To weaponize digital silence, you must understand the concept of the variable ratio schedule. This is the same psychological mechanic that makes slot machines addictive. If a lever pays out every single time, you get bored. If it never pays out, you leave. But if it pays out randomly, sometimes instantly, sometimes after a long wait, you become addicted to the process. In your digital communication, do not be consistent. If you always reply instantly, you are predictable. If you always wait exactly for hours, you are playing games. The key is unpredictability. Sometimes you reply in 2 minutes. Sometimes you reply in 6 hours. Sometimes you reply the next morning. This prevents people from taking your attention for granted. It signals that your time is owned by you, not by your notifications. It forces people to check their phones, wondering when they will hear from you. You are occupying real estate in their minds simply by not being there. Furthermore, consider the power of the red receipt in high-minus stakes negotiations or conflicts. Many people turn off red receipts to hide. A high-minus status move is to leave them on, read the message, and then not reply for a significant period. This sends a brutal message. I have seen what you said, and I have chosen not to prioritize it yet. It establishes hierarchy. It tells the other person that their urgency is not your emergency. Of course, use this with caution. It is a nuclear option in social dynamics, but it is highly effective when you need to establish boundaries with a toxic person or a demanding client. This leads us to the use of silence in conflict resolution and argument dominance. When someone attacks you verbally, whether it's an insult, a passive aggressive comment, or an emotional outburst, your instinct is to defend yourself. This is the defensive spiral. If they say, "You're always lazy," and you immediately snap back, "No, I'm not. I worked all weekend." You have just validated their frame. You have accepted their premise that your work ethic is up for debate. Instead, try the gray rock silence. When someone throws a verbal barb, you do not react. You do not flinch. You look at them, wait 3 seconds, and then continue what you were doing or change the subject entirely, or even more powerful. You wait 3 seconds, and then ask a logistical question. You're so incompetent. Silence. Pause. Did you want the report in PDF or Excel format? This behavior signals to the aggressor that their words have zero emotional impact on you. It is devastating to the ego of a manipulator. Narcissists and toxic personalities feed on narcissistic supply, which is your emotional reaction. If you deny them that supply through silence, they starve. They lose their power. You become a gray rock, and interesting, unmovable, and unbreakable. By refusing to engage in the argument, you win the argument. But let's go deeper into a form of silence that is rarely discussed: the silence of competence. Have you ever noticed that the most competent people in a room are often the quietest? In aviation, there is a rule known as the sterile cockpit rule. During the most critical phases of flight, like takeoff and landing, pilots are forbidden from engaging in non-essential conversation. Silence is mandated because focus is required. In high-risk performance fields, special forces, neurosurgery, elite athletics, communication becomes minimal. It becomes telepathic. Amateurs narrate their actions. They talk about what they are going to do. They talk while they are doing it. And they talk about what they did. This is because they are unsure. They are talking to reassure themselves. Masters do not narrate. They execute. When you are truly competent at something, you don't need to broadcast it. The silence of competence is a terrifying thing to witness. Imagine a meeting where everyone is panicking about a crisis. People are shouting over each other, blaming, brainstorming frantically. Then the leader enters. They don't shout. They don't run. They assess the situation in total silence for 30 seconds. Then, they give 3 clear, direct orders. That silence before the orders is what commands the room. It signals that they are not infected by the panic. They are above it. If you want to be seen as a leader, stop narrating your work. Stop telling people how hard you are working. Stop telling people what you plan to do. Let the results scream so loud that your voice isn't needed. Now, let's pivot to the role of silence in seduction and charisma. There is a misconception that to be charismatic, you must be a dazzling entertainer. You must tell the best jokes and have the wildest stories. But look at the archetype of the strong, silent type. Why is this attractive? It comes down to the psychology of projection. When you talk constantly, you remove all mystery. You define exactly who you are, what you think, and what your limits are. You become a known quantity. Known quantities are boring. When you speak less, you become a blank canvas. People project their own fantasies, desires, and assumptions onto you. If you are silent and confident, people assume you are intelligent. They assume you are judging them favorably. They assume you have depths that they haven't explored yet. You become a puzzle that they want to solve. In the early stages of dating or social networking, silence creates a dopamine loop in the other person's brain. It is the principle of variable reward. If you validate them constantly with words, the reward is predictable, and they get bored. If you use silence, you withhold the validation when you finally do speak. When you finally give them a compliment or a piece of information, it hits harder. The value of your words increases due to their scarcity. Supply and demand. If your words are in low supply, their demand goes up. We must also address the pause of formatting. This is a technique for intellectual dominance. When you are asked a complex question, never answer immediately, even if you know the answer. An immediate answer suggests you are reciting a script. It suggests you haven't considered the specific nuance of this specific question. Instead, take the thinker's pause. Look away, perhaps upward or to the side, for 2 full seconds. This signals that you are retrieving information, synthesizing it, and formatting it for the listener. Then, deliver the answer. This small theatrical performance of silence increases the perceived value of your intelligence. It makes you look thoughtful rather than just knowledgeable. There is a difference. A computer is knowledgeable, a leader is thoughtful. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, this sounds great in theory, but if I do this, it'll just look awkward. It'll look like I forgot what to say. This brings us to the most difficult part of this protocol, the internal battle. The reason you don't use silence is not because you don't know it works, it's because it feels physically painful to you. We are socialized to be pleasers. We are taught that silence is rude. To master this, you must reframe your relationship with the sensation of awkwardness. You need to understand that awkwardness is simply social pressure. Most people try to dissipate that energy. You need to learn to metabolize it. You need to learn to sit in the fire. Here is a practical exercise you can start doing tomorrow. It's called the Barista Challenge. It is a low minus, takes environment to test your tolerance for social pressure. When you order your coffee and the barista asks, anything else? Simply say no, and then maintain eye contact. Do not look down at your phone. Do not smile overly hard. Just look at them pleasantly and wait for them to tell you the total. It will only last about 3 seconds, but it will feel like an hour. You will feel the urge to say, that's all, thanks, or to fumble for your wallet immediately to break the connection. Resist it. Observe that feeling of heat in your chest. That is the feeling of dominance leaving your body and submission entering it. By resisting the urge to break the silence, you are training your nervous system to tolerate high-minus pressure social interaction. Once you master the Barista Challenge, you move up to the meeting anchor. In your next business meeting or group discussion, make a pact with yourself. You will not speak for the first few minutes. No matter how much you want to chime in, no matter how smart your idea is, sit back, listen, observe. You will notice something fascinating. Because you aren't talking, you are actually listening. You are seeing the chessboard. You will see who is insecure, who is posturing, and who actually knows what they are talking about. And when you finally do speak at the 10-minute mark, notice how the room reacts. Because you haven't been babbling, your voice carries more weight. You have established yourself as the judicial authority in the room, rather than just another participant in the noise. There is a darker side to this psychology as well, which we must address: the silent treatment in relationships. The silent treatment is often considered a form of emotional abuse, and rightfully so. It is a way to deny someone existence. I am not advocating for you to use this to hurt people you love. However, you must understand it so you can recognize when it is being used against you. When someone uses the silent treatment on you, they are trying to trigger your abandonment circuit. They want you to chase them. They want you to apologize, just to restore the connection. The only way to win against the silent treatment is to mirror it. Do not chase. If they withdraw, you withdraw. You must show that you are self-sustained. If their silence causes you to panic, they own you. If their silence is met with your own productive, unbothered silence, their tactic fails. They are forced to re-engage or lose the relationship. Let's discuss the poker face of silence. It is not just about the mal, it is about the micro-expressions. If you are silent, but your face is twitching with anger, or your eyebrows are raised in worry, you are not silent. You are screaming non-meanness verbally. True mastery is the flat line. This involves relaxing the muscles around the eyes and the jaw. When you present a flatline expression combined with silence, you become unreadable. In negotiation theory, this is critical because you are denying your opponent tells. If they name a price and you flinch, they know they have you. If they name a price and you give them the flatline silence, they have no data. They don't know if you are offended, if you are considering it, or if you are bored. This lack of data forces them to bid against themselves to get a reaction out of you. Let's synthesize all of this into a lifestyle philosophy. We live in the information age, but we are drowning in the noise age. Attention is the new currency. By being silent, you become an anomaly. You become a black hole in a universe of stars, and gravity pulls everything toward the black hole. The people who talk the most are often trying to prove they exist. Look at me, I matter. The person who is comfortable in silence knows they matter. They do not need to prove it. This is the ultimate status signal. It is the difference between a chihuahua barking at everything that moves and a lion sleeping under a tree. The lion doesn't bark because the lion knows what it can do. The lion's silence is more terrifying than the chihuahua's noise. So, how do you execute this transformation? You cannot go from a chatterbox to a monk overnight. People will think you are depressed. You must implement this in phases. Phase 1 is the edit. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this true? Is this necessary? Does this improve on the silence? You will find that 50% of what you were about to say is fluff. It's filler. It's nervous energy. Just stop talking when the sentence is done. Do not trail off. Do not add, you know what I mean. Just end the sentence and close your mouth. Phase 2 is the extension. This is where you start using the second lag and low stakes conversations. Watch how people react. Watch them squirm. Get comfortable with their discomfort. Realize that their discomfort cannot hurt you. Phase 3 is the weaponization. This is where you use silence in negotiation, in conflict, and in seduction. This is where you stop answering questions immediately. This is where you use the flatline face. This is where you start dominating the room by controlling the rhythm of the energy. Be warned, this power is addictive. Once you realize that you can control the emotional state of others simply by withholding your words, you might be tempted to become cold or manipulative. Do not lose your humanity. The goal is not to be a robot. The goal is to be a master of yourself. The ancient Stoics knew this. The samurai knew this. The great negotiators of history knew this. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. It is the canvas upon which human behavior is painted. You cannot see the picture. Stop broadcasting. Start tuning in. Stop seeking validation. Start commanding attention. The next time you feel the urge to fill the awkward pause, suppress it. Let the silence hang there. Let it grow heavy. Watch the other person's eyes. Watch them reveal themselves to you. In a world that never stops talking, the silent person is the most dangerous person in the room, because while everyone else is busy explaining who they are, the silent person is the only one actually watching, analyzing, and planning. The power is not in the tongue. The power is in the pause. Use it.